Chapter 23 Revelations. Love and Magic Rowan. While Rianne meticulously scanned for any hidden racking devices, the rest of us delved into the confiscated materials. All clear, Rianne announced, his fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced ease. I found myself engrossed in Cormac's meticulous notes, my stomach churning as I uncovered the horrific torture techniques he employed under the guise of scientific research. Each entry contained detailed summaries of the torment inflicted on his specimens, including age, sex, and race. Rianne's printer word to life, spitting out a lengthy list of names HED unearthed from the computer files. He gestured towards a slim folder on the desk. Fiona, could you check that folder over there? Fiona complied, her brow furrowing as she examined the contents. I'm not sure I understand, but it seems to be a list of company names. She passed the paper to Rianne, whose face drained of color as he studied it. What is it? I pressed, my analytical mind already racing with possibilities. Rianne's voice was tight as he explained. It's a list of suppliers and their products. Over the past year, this monster has been receiving various races of creatures of primordial as payment from an anonymous individual. Can you identify the source? I asked, crossing my arms as I processed this disturbing information. No, Rianne replied, shaking his head. HS categorized the list by race. Wolves, vampires, witches, and so on. He ran a hand down his face, his observant eyes scanning the paper once more. Hold on. I've just noticed something significant. The only race not delivered to him by this undisclosed source are the fairies. He fixed me with a pointed look, his meaning clear. Kat, her empathetic nature evident, hugged herself and murmured, absolutely reprehensible, shock coloring her voice. Rianne's eyebrows shot up as he made another discovery. It appears our brilliant scientist had his experiment funded, and you won't believe what HES calling it. He looked at us expectantly. Fiona leaned over his shoulder, her eyes widening as she read from the paper. Suddenly, she clapped a hand over her mouth, exclaiming, "Oh my God, no!" Before any of us could react, she bolted from the room. I felt a wave of revulsion, rage, and pain emanating from her, my senses on high alert. Whatever information that paper held, it was clearly beyond horrific. Rianne coughed and held out the document for me to take. The experiment is called Sexflex. Rowan, you were right. And Cormac Quinn has been behind this drug epidemic the whole time. I'm going to check on her, Kat said, following Fiona from the room. I nodded and grabbed the paper, scanning each line. The names of other packs and races intermingled with those of my pack members. I can access each one on the computer, since every name has a separate file, Rianne said. It seems there are notes of the components used to make Sexflex from what I've read. It's already spread to other countries. That sick bastard. I slammed my fist on the desk and handed the paper back to Rianne. Fiona's pain was palpable, yet given the day's events. Her feeling of being overwhelmed was understandable. She appeared distraught, hurt, and wounded, learning what a monster her father was. Somehow, my hatred for the infamous scientist and notorious hunter increased. Okay, I say we call it a night, I told Rianne. We all need to rest up for the Wolf Council meeting tomorrow. Our discussion will cover the search and rescue of Kyra and a briefing on our discoveries. I think we should inform the other races and get their help to stop Quinn and his experiments before the situation gets any worse. Rianne nodded in agreement. Yeah, that all sounds about right. But he'll kill that bastard if he lays a hand on Kyra. Okay. I'm going to check in on Fiona before going to bed. He yawned. Go to bed and I'll check in on her. No, Rianne said, shaking his head. You've been a cocky asshole to her, and she doesn't need that shite tonight. I know how to be sensitive. Rianne, everyone already knows you are the king of personality. My frosty glare caused him to flinch. But Fiona has been through hell, especially today, and I plan on treating her with nothing but kindness. So, to bed. Bro, I felt my jaw twitch as we stared at each other. Ryan glanced away first, yanked the papers, journals, and laptop off the desk, and placed them under his arm, and I followed close behind him up the stairs. I stood waiting until he entered his bedroom and went in search of Fiona. I knocked and Kat opened the door, looking pale and fatigued. "How's Fiona?" I asked. "Come in." She took a step back to allow me to enter. "We are just trying to take it all in, but it's so confusing." Kat shook her head and ran her fingers through her long blonde tresses. "So much has happened that I'm not sure what to concentrate on first. Oh. Listen, lass, we will work it all out together. Try not to become too overwhelmed. Okay?" I patted her arm, trying to reassure her. But I realized all this affected Kat like the rest of us. Imagine finding out, after spending your whole life as a human, that you are not only a fairy, but the daughter of a fairy queen. Gil nodded at me as I searched her scared, looking eyes. "Tomorrow at the council meeting, I'll speak to some of my top-ranking members and ask around about your mother." She gave me a flat smile, nodding. "Thank you. But I'm most concerned about Kyra and her safety. I can't help feeling responsible." Kat looked down at the floor, and I suspected she was tearing up again. "I've told you already that was on me. Not you," I said in a careful and kind tone. "We will get Kyra back. So try to get some rest. And stop blaming yourself for things you are not responsible for. You aren't liable for anything that has happened except choosing the wrong man to take a pill from." Her head jerked up, and I almost laughed at the incredulous expression on her face. My smile broke the ice, and she grinned, wiping the moisture from her eyes before giving me a light punch to the arm. "But thanks. I would appreciate any information about my actual mother. It seems Fiona and I have both been living lies our whole lives. But to find out that my birth mother is a fairy queen." She stared up at the ceiling, shaking her head. "Well, it's just unreal and hard to fathom." I know. Kid, I know. And I promise you, we will get everything sorted out. You are not alone. Thanks, Rowan. Fiona is pretty upset. Maybe you can cheer her up like you did me." She smiled and gestured toward Fiona's crumpled figure on the bed. After sitting on the edge of the bed, I watched Kat slip from the room, giving me some privacy. "How are you, lass?" I fingered the hair from Fiona's eyes, tucking some strands behind her ear, and she glanced at me with a sad smile. "I'm doing about as well as anyone else." She shrugged her shoulders and closed her eyes. "Thanks for checking on me, but I'm just exhausted." "Rowan? And want to sleep?" "All right." My breath hitched in my throat as I stared at her. She appeared so small and vulnerable that it made my chest constrict. "There's just something I wanted to tell you, and then it'll leave so you can rest." She opened her eyes and stared at me. "Sure. Go ahead." "I didn't mean to be rude. You didn't deserve how I've been treating you, and I hope you can forgive me. But I just needed some time to think and be alone." Her eyes widened, but she remained silent, and I watched her pulse thump in her slender neck and almost lost my nerve. After clearing my throat, I said, "You have no idea what you mean to me. What you are to me." Fiona reached over and took my hand. "I feel the same way." She pushed herself up from the bed, her fingers still entwined in mine. I tightened my grip on her hand and smiled. "I'm glad, lass, but that's not what I meant." She reared back, tearing her hand from mine, and moved back from me with her knees pulled up to her chin. With a groan of frustration, I wiped a hand down my face. "Listen to me, Fiona, because this is important." The look of confusion on her face made me want to blurt it out, but I refrained. "You'll have to be patient since I don't have a way with words like my brother, but just say what you mean." "Rowan, I told you I'm so fucking exhausted and I can't handle any of your stupid games right now." She glared at me and I felt all the emotions swirling inside her, causing my heart to race and ache. "I'm trying, love, but I'm asking you to let me do this. Maybe I should leave and we can speak tomorrow." She grabbed my arm as I moved to leave. "No, stay. I'm sorry. Let me first say that I'm in love with you. I told her, and felt her swift jolt of affection and my racing pulse as my heart thundered in my ears, causing an overdrive of emotions to course through me. But there's more. Her eyes narrowed to slits. What does that mean? It means that you are the only one for me, Fiona, but it's complicated. My hands found hers, lying atop her knees, and I searched her eyes. You are my fated mate, my Luna. I swallowed hard, waiting for her reaction. With eyes round as plates, she whispered, "W what? I mean, what does that even mean? Destined mate. Luna. It means we were born for each other. Fiona." Tears formed in her eyes and I felt her hands shake. "But we will face a lot of opposition from your pack members," she said, blinking away the teardrops ready to fall from her lashes. "Because Cormac Quinn, the supernatural hunter and lunatic scientist, is my father." Fiona pulled her hand from mine, wiped her eyes, and sighed. "And wait until they find out HE's responsible for Sexflex and all the experiments on your race." She shook her head, crying anew. "Calm down. Love, we will take it one day and one step at a time. Remember, I'm the Alpha. And you, my Luna, I have fought this for too long and refuse to live life without you." "When did you realize?" she asked, peering into my eyes with such intensity that I felt it in my soul. I remained silent for a beat, watching her eyes narrow. "From the moment I saw you." "Well, that's not true. I smelled you first." She jumped from the bed, pacing the room with one hand on her hip. "You mean to tell me you've known this since the night we met at the club?" Fiona whirled around and rushed at me. A grimace marred her delicate features. She stood before me, appearing much taller than she was from my vantage point, sitting on the bed. All this time, she threw her head back, letting loose a crazed cackle that sent shivers crawling over my skin. "You put me through hell, Alfie O'Connell. Pure hell. Lass, I'm sorry, but you don't understand what." "Shut up," she shouted, gripping the sides of her face, and I watched in fascination as her eyes turned an unnatural shade of crimson and red. "My God, what is happening to me?" Fiona stumbled to the bed, thrashing in agony. The lights flickered before a gust of wind rushed through the bedroom, knocking pictures from the walls and destroying the once neat room. As the wind died, I cradled Fiona, rocking her while holding her against me. The door burst open, and Kat and Rhiannon stood in open, mouthed dismay. "What in the fuck?" Ryan asked, looking astounded, while Kat rushed to Fiona's side. "I do not know," I said, shaking my head. "But if I had to guess, it's safe Fiona has found some of her powers." In quiet awe, everyone looked around, taking in the room's destruction. Kat broke the silence. "This is some badass shit. Fiona, if you can do all this." She motioned around the bedroom. "Just imagine the hell I could raise." Kat winked. Chapter 24, The Fairies Fiona. The following morning, I found Rowan and Rhiannon going through those damn documents we removed from my father's house. My brain felt like mush from a form of insane overload, and I vowed to put all my emotions regarding Rowan in a box for the moment. Important matters demanded my concentration, such as Kyra's disappearance. I cowled and acted selfish while my devious father held her somewhere at his mercy. Meanwhile, my awareness of the danger posed by Sexflex was sufficient. Although I did not grasp the enormity of its ramifications, it would have to be someone powerful to "What are you guys talking about?" Both brothers turned at my voice. I felt foolish barging in and interrupting their conversation, but I cowled and helped myself. Rowan pointed at a chair. "Have a seat. Lass, Ryan has done a deep dive on your father's computer and files." He cleared his throat as I sat. Both men looked uncomfortable, and I wondered what had stumbled upon. For over a year, Quinn has done extensive studying of all races except for the fairies. I squirmed in my chair, waiting for Rhiannon to continue. Although I know HES experimented on fairies before, Ryan threw me a tight grimace and glanced at Rowan. It's okay. Guys, I promise not to go nuts and destroy your living room if you say something I don't like. With a shrug, I said, it's not like I know how to use my newfound powers anyway, but I can control my temper. I smiled and Rhiannon continued. Well, it seems Cormac stopped hunting fairies when he began working on this extensive project, Sexflex. So what does that mean? I asked. It means whoever is funding his research on Sexflex is a member of the fairy court. Ryan squinted up at me before glancing back at the paper in his lap. I mean, it's the only thing that makes sense, since we know he was doing experimental things with Kat recently. Well, it would have to be someone powerful and significant within the fairy court hierarchy for Cormac to stop hunting the entire fairy race. Rowan added, I'm willing to bet whoever HES teamed up with made that part of the deal. You know, do what you like, but not with my kind. Do you know any powerful fairies? I now felt a strong curiosity after finding out I was part fairy and wanted to learn as much as I could. Well, there's a few. Queen Celestria is at the top of my list, Rowan said, lifting his brows. We now know Shesket's mother and queen of the entire fairy realm. I felt overwhelmed. Do fairies have monarchies? Any time I saw Owen or heard his voice, my heart seemed lodged in my throat. Stop it. Fiona, you promised not to dwell on him or your relationship until Kyra was safe. At least. Rowan's voice forced me from my knees. Yes, they do. Fairies are also immoral, and their leaders reign for hundreds of years. They are also pompous and self-centered creatures with terrible tempers. Rowan gave me a sideways glance. His mouth turned up in a coy grin, and Rhiannon laughed out loud. I cowled and suppressed the chuckle trying to escape from my chest or the smile tugging at my lips. It seems you care little for fairies. With my head cocked, I glared at them, trying to appear serious. They are rather unpleasant creatures. Rhiannon lifted a shoulder and grinned at me. Not you, though. You're pleasant enough, but you're only half fairy. Cheeky man. Rhiannon's sunny disposition made it challenging to feel angry with him. I threw him a grin and rolled my eyes while thinking about everything I'd learned from them. So if fairies are immortal and in part fairy, the idea of living for hundreds of years stunned me something else to cloud my mind. You will live longer than normal humans, but not thousands of years like a pure fairy. Rhiannon said, How long do lycanthropes live? I glanced between them, raising my brows. Around 2 to 300 years. Rowan winked at me well. My mouth dropped in astonishment, and Rhiannon gave me a silly smile. Fairies live for ages and hold even longer grudges, especially those snooty creatures in Queen Celestia's court. They are cocky, haughty, resentful beings who feel superior to everyone else. Ryan grimaced, shaking his head. His disdain for fairies seemed clear. If a fairy in Queen Celestia's court is in cahoots with my father, we must know and find out why they helped him with Sexflex. Yes, we do. Rhiannon nodded. But it's not easy getting in touch with the fairies. Do they live somewhere amongst us? I rubbed my hands down my legs to keep from shaking. The thought of finding my mother had me feeling so many mixed emotions. Norian shook his head. They lied in a dimension split between this plane and other. His admission shocked me, and I stared at him, confused. Lass, fairies are powerful, elemental creatures. You can't just drive to their house. Rowan chuckled, and I felt my face blush. Yes, I suppose so. I mean, they live on a different plane than us, but it's hard for me to wrap my head around yet. Ryan joined and laughed at my dismay. Just think of a dimension like this one where we live. Only theirs is a mirrored element where time differs from ours. I've read fairy tales about children roaming the woods for what they assume is a few minutes or hours and come back to find they've been missing for years. That's my only knowledge. I shrugged. Yes, like that. Rhiannon nodded. To contact a fairy in the Queen's court, we have to request an audience with a member of her court. But getting a fairy who will speak with us could be a challenge. We need to find something to tempt the fairy with and it might work. Fairies love gifts or trinkets, and shiny things easily distract them, but they are faithful to their queen. And speaking of their queen, if Salustria has anything to do with Sexflex and Cormac, we are signing our death certificate, Rowan said, frowning. Do you know someone in the court who might help us? I held my breath. Ryan and Rowan exchanged glances. Perhaps. Rowan threw me a severe look and wiped a hand down his face, but only as a last resort. His tone suggested reluctance as well as his hooded expression. Can we contact my mother? I felt my throat constrict as they glared at me and my hands were sweating. Ever since finding out Tame Earl and A was alive, I had yearned for her, and knowing my mother was a fairy did nothing to quell that craving. Their silence spoke volumes, but I wasn't ready to give up. I'm her daughter. She might help us. I shrugged, blinking back the tears stinging behind my eyes. Rowan and Rianne remained speechless, staring at each other for a moment. I don't know. Fiona. Ryan shook his head, refusing to look at me. We have to be very careful. Lass, it's possible a Merle N as the fairy in cahoots with your father. Rowan gave me a tight smile as pity filled his eyes. I don't think it's her. I shook my head, not wanting to believe my mother could be evil like Cormac. What were the odds of both my parents being monsters? My father spoke about my mother with such scorn, and Ivy always sensed something dreadful happened between them. Shess right. Rianne glared at his brother. Cormac held her prisoner for Feck's sake. Rowan. A Merlin A could be our way, and God knows we need the upper hand to get Kyra back. Yep, that's what I think too, while we don't know how they ended the relationship. I fear it wasn't on pleasant terms, and if she resents him or holds a deep grievance. You said fairies love holding grudges. Then perhaps we can use that to our advantage. I held my breath, praying they saw the benefit. I realize she's your mother, Fiona, but it may be difficult getting a Merlin A to go along with our plan. She would have to find out who in the fairy court teamed up with your father. Rowan frowned at me, looking somber. Remember, lass, she's not just a fairy, but also a complete stranger to you. I don't want you getting hurt. Fiona. I could tell from his voice we hadn't sold Rowan on the idea. She's still my mother. A note of just desperation sounded in my voice and I'd twisted my hands in my lap. Do fairies not love their children? Alt air slipped past my eye and down my cheek, falling onto my tank top. Yes, lass. Fairies have a deep love for their offspring. Rowan raked a hand through his hair and groaned before glancing at Rianne. It seemed he wanted his brother's help. Fairies are temperamental beings. Fiona. They see children as a part of themselves, but their love can turn to scorn in the blink of an eye, depending on their mood at the moment. Ryan shook his head, giving me a sad smile. I see, I whispered, thinking how awful that seemed and wondering if I could handle my mother's rejection. What if she's different and nothing like Cormac? What if she's longing for me too? Regardless, what other choice do we have? I still think we should at least try. I think it's worth a try. Rian nodded at me, but we can't contact a fairy until the next full moon. Why during a full moon? I asked, shrugging. While I had heard many tales about what happened during a full moon, I disregarded them as folklore, because the pathway between our world and the fairy domain is only open during a full moon. It seals up with the new moon, Rowan explained, taking over for Rianne, who looked like someone had stolen his thunder. I think we must try. Rowan, if someone from the fairy realm is conspiring with Cormac, we have to find out. And Fiona's mother could be our only hope. Rianne glanced at me before turning his gaze to Rowan. Fine, we will try, said Rowan, with an exhausted but thoughtful expression. I bit back a grin at the thought of meeting my mother, since I couldn't remember anything about her. All I had were photos to cling on to. First, we speak to the council member thing we have found out. Then we must decide how to alert the leaders of all the other races as well. They have a right to know. Afterward, we can work on opening the portal during the next full moon. Ryan stood and stretched, running a hand through his tousled hair. and picked up the computer and files. Are you guys joining me for breakfast? Sure, but give us a moment, bro. Rowan lifted his chin toward the door. As Rian left, Rowan jumped up. We should eat. Too, and you look like you need more rest. The memory of him holding me and his fingers stroking my hair after my strange experience last night flooded my mind. I rose and approached him, gazing into his eyes. I'm so sorry about how I reacted last night when you confessed that I'm your destined mate. He beamed at me with such a smile that I wanted to kiss him, breaking my promise. It's okay, Fiona. Rowan glanced around to make sure we were still alone. It was a lot to take in, and you have been through so much in a short time. He rubbed his thumb along my cheek, and the hairs on my arms stood up. I just wanted you to know. I thought at one time I could ignore it, send you away and live my life without you. Rowan let out a sound like a growl, staring at the ceiling before taking my upper arms in his warm hands. Then I realized, I'm not strong enough to resist you or our bond. I know you're not a werewolf, Fiona, but you must feel something between us. Rowan peered deep into my eyes. A look of agony crossed his features, causing him to appear humble and desperate. I swallowed hard and tried to keep from weeping. Of course, I do. I felt nothing so intense and compelling. Ever. It's like a magnetic tug pulling me to you, or my heart screaming to my mind, saying you're the only one for me. But with all your mixed signals, I stared down at my feet, feeling self-conscious. It's okay. I know, he said, dragging me into his broad chest and dropping a kiss on my head. I am so sorry and regret playing with your emotions, but I've dreamed for years of finding my mate. Fiona, Ro and Rue back and stared at me. I just never imagined my Luna as anything but a fellow wolf, and I certainly never expected a human or fairy. Despite my inner child wanting to take offense, or maybe my fairy genes were stirring, I took Ro and Ness' words at face value and recognized their innocence. To be honest, I could have said the same to him. In my craziest dreams, expected to be destined for a werewolf, Luna Fiona O'Connell, I thought, grinning. The name had a pleasing sound, and as Rowan kissed me, I sensed it was something I could become accustomed to. Chapter 25, Celestria Immerse, Queen of the Fae Rowan. The past few days passed in a blur, while the media and news reported on all the bizarre incidents caused by Sexflex. The drug was becoming more potent and treacherous every day. Many experts cautioned about the danger of prolonged use, while journalists reported on its nationwide spread. Sexflex has reached across Europe and into North America, Rian announced with his eyes glued to the television screen. Kat sat next to him, dismayed, and shook her head before jumping up and switching off the TV. Enough of that. You are becoming obsessed. She stood, hands on hips, as if challenging him. Things had been tumultuous in our household since I made a deal with Rian's favorite witch, fairies, enraging him. He loathed witches far more than fairies, but he held a special hostility for fairies. It felt safe to say fairies had lost no sleep over it. She seemed to hold Rian in the same regard. I wasn't fond, per se, of witches, but they came in useful from time to time. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer, if you may. And if you needed a witch in your corner, fairies was hard to beat. Yes, she was rough around the edges, and had a nasty case of potty mouth. Fairies cursed like a sailor, but her witchcraft was unparalleled. She also gave a new meaning to the term bewitching. Viola was a stunning beauty and drew men like moth. Then afterward, she squashed them beneath the heel of her stiletto. The little Spitfire was tiny but mighty. It was no simple task to persuade fairies to lend us a hand, particularly given her aversion to Cormac Quinn. Despite her power, fairies was afraid of the psychotic scientist with good reason. After 2 days of negotiating and a hefty sum of money, I tucked fairies away in our best guest suite and saw to her every need. The grand treatment I gave our guests had Rian livid with rage. I saw it as insurance and planned to keep her happy as the full moon inched closer. as werewolves. Besides shifting into raging beasts, we had no mythical powers, and Fiona and Kat were of little help. Neither understood their magical gifts yet, and I didn't want to wait for the next full moon to attempt contacting the Fire Realm. I needed someone who could guide us to the portal. Time was not on our side, as Sexflex swept the nation and my innocent sister was behind enemy lines. Still, Rian continued to grumble over Vion's presence under his roof. If the situation was dire, you find the entire ordeal hilarious. There was nothing better than teasing your younger sibling, and watching Rian squirm should have been fun. However, I felt like a dark cloud hovered above me. "Morning," Fiona said, smiling as she entered the living room. She looked lovely in an old sweatshirt and leggings, with her jet black hair pulled into a high ponytail with rebellious strands escaping at her temples. I smelled her before she arrived. The odor of sweet sweat, a winter storm, and patchouli wafted in the air. Fiona's cheeks were flushed from being outside, and I noticed a faraway look in her eyes. "Morning," Rian answered. I was trying to watch the news, but he coughed. "Somebody turned off my TV set. Well, we are sick of the gloom and doom." "Damn it." Kat crossed her arms, glaring at Rian. "All right." Fiona glanced at me, her brows raised. "Kitty cat, let's cook up a big breakfast and leave the guys to the gloom and doom for a bit." "Fine." Kat scowled at Rian before storming from the room. I looked at Fiona. "Do you mind making enough for our guest?" "I'm sure she is hungry by now, and this isn't a bed and breakfast." Rian spat, jumping up to grab the TV remote. "I swear, Rowan, you act like Queen Elizabeth is staying here." He shook his head, jutting out his chin in anger. "Guys, don't start trolling again." Fiona let out a frustrated-sounding growl. "Row in. Of course they'll make enough for Queen Vione." And Rian, "Stop bickering." She shook her head and retreated from the room. "She's right, bro. You have to calm down. We need Vione, and you know it." I narrowed my eyes at him, waiting for him to implode. Rian raked a hand through his hair and sighed. "I know we need her." He flicked on the television, "but that doesn't mean I have to like it." Soon after, Fiona called us to breakfast, and I prayed that Rian's mood remained civil. As I entered the room, seeing Vione seated at the table dashed my hopes. Oh boy, I thought to myself. I'd have everything ready for the summoning. Vione sit around bites of eggs. We shouldn't have any problems contacting someone from the fairy court. Fiona choked on her coffee and wiped her mouth. She stared at Vione with eyes as big as plates. "When are we doing it? How's after breakfast?" Vione shrugged. "But it's not dark. I thought it had to be a full moon." Fiona replied with a frown. "A moon is full. Just because it hasn't risen here yet means nothing." Vione winked, and I heard Rian's low growl. As I stared at the tiny witch and my bulky brother, I couldn't help but feel there was something between them. Something scary but magical. I could almost smell it. Fiona stood up, leaving her breakfast on the table untouched. All right, let's do it." Kat threw a dirty look and scoffed. "Can't we finish our food first?" "About that," Vione said, grimacing, "you need to stay inside. As a pure fairy, I don't think it would be smart to have you with us. It could fuck up everything." Kat's brows raised. Well, if you say so. I've screwed up enough as is undim hungry." She returned to her food. "Mess it up how?" Kat asked, appearing upset. "I wanted Kat with me." She grabbed her napkin, wringing it in her hands. "You're gonna have to just fuck and trust me on this." Vione gave Fiona a tight smile. "I know you are new to all this, but I'm not. The fire precarious beings and offended by the smallest of matters. They are often jealous creatures as well, and with one look, they will know another Fi. You will be fine. Fiona, I'll be there with you in spirit." Kat smiled at her, standing up and embracing Fiona. Let's get this over with. I have things to do in my own life. Fiona marched from the kitchen, leaving us to follow her lead. As we trekked through the snow in the yard, I noticed how Fiona and Viola conversed. It seemed Fiona had grown fond of Fiona, which was rare. Fiona didn't like many people. How much further? Rian asked as we drew deeper into the frigid forest. Fiona threw him an icy glare over her shoulder. "I'll let you know when we are close," she snapped. After walking another few hundred feet, Fiona stopped. "Shovel." "Rian." She held out her hand, and he thrust it at her. "Don't be such a dick." Fiona yanked the tool from him and drew a large circle in the snow. "What are you doing?" Fiona asked, her brow furrowed. "It's part of the ritual," Fiona explained, her voice sounding kind, which was odd. "Remember, the fire elemental beings, so to contact them, I'm using a place among the elements. A snowy forest under this magical 1,000-year-old tree should do the trick." She threw Fiona a wink and stared up at the massive tree and whispered a chanted spell. Fiona's eyes met mine for a moment before returning her gaze to Fiona, concentrating on what the witch was doing. Minutes later, Rian deposited a pile of stuff on the snowy ground. Fiona prepared everything, arranging it in proper order. To gain a fae's attention, we must offer our gift, and I'll recite an incantation, hoping they hear my request. Fiona's explanation was for Fiona's benefit. She placed saucers on the floor with trinkets inside, spicy scented incense, a bowl of golden water, dried flowers, and a small beaker of fizzing steam. Fiona studied everything, appearing in awe. Fairies like things like this as gifts. Fiona looked perplexed. "They like what everyone likes," I told her. Fiona placed herself in the center of the circle with a gold and dish containing several precious stones. Gold, white gold, and platinum rings. Fiona watched with astonishment and took one of the gems. "Are these all real?" "Yes, even the diamonds." Rian frowned. "I hope it works because this could become an expensive sacrament to perform." "Yes, I can see that," Fiona whispered, fingering the sparkling jewels in her palm before handing them back to the witch. "Listen, Fiona, these fairies are dangerous. I know I've already harped about it, but you must be careful and remain calm." I approached her, a serious frown tugging at my lips. Fiona folded her arms and nodded. "Fairies are dangerous. I get it." I shook my head. "But this time it's different and you might find yourself alone with one. Perhaps it will be with my mother." I refuse to be afraid of her. "I'm not sure who you will contact," Fiona said. "And if it is your mother, remember, you do not know her. And even if she's kind, fairies have strict rules. Rules that you have to follow to the letter if you don't want to piss them off." Fiona took Fiona's hands, holding them tight. "Tell me the rules, and I promise to follow them." Fiona glanced down into Fiona's eyes. "Never make eye contact or even peek into their eyes. It is defiant behavior to them." "Okay, I won't." Fiona nodded. "Don't speak loud, but just above a whisper." Fiona continued, still holding Fiona's hands. "And whatever you do, do not make any abrupt movements. And regardless of what happens or what they say to you, try to remain serene and control your emotions." Rian added, "Am I going into a lion's den?" Fiona's voice sounded sarcastic, but I heard the nervousness beneath her bravado. "Yes, you are," I told her. "Fairies are the most dangerous creatures you will ever meet and easily become outraged. It's almost impossible to gain their forgiveness, while it's easy to earn their contempt. Once I trigger the circle, you are on your own." "Kid," I watched Fiona kiss Fiona's cheek. "When you enter, state your name, and the name of the fairy you wish to contact. Try your mother, but I can't promise anything." "All right." Fiona gave a curt nod, and I felt my heart beating like kettle drums in my ears. It could take hours for them to arrive, assuming everything goes smoothly. Fairies aren't keen to acknowledge mortal requests. They might make you wait, I said. Vi shot me a glare, reminding me she was the expert. State your purpose 3 times, then leave the circle and wait for a response. How will I know if they deny me? Asked Fiona. Our gifts will disappear, and the lighted circle will break. Vi shrugged. You mean they will still take the gold and diamonds even if they deny our request? Fiona asked, mouth hanging open. That's how they are, Rian said with clear contempt. It goes to show the arrogant creatures you're dealing with. Vi and tiptoed out of the circle. And I approached Fiona. One more thing. I stared at Fiona, losing myself in the beauty of her eyes. The temporary intimacy between us aroused my wolf, causing a palpable anxiety to pulse through me. Hurry. I'm off to defend myself against these devious fairies. She winked at me, giving me a watery smile. There is another sacrifice you can present to help bribe them. Fiona gaped down at the blade in my hand, and I placed it in her palm. Cut yourself and allow the blood to sprinkle the offerings. So for 3 calls, make 3 cuts. Her mouth drew into a tight, straight line. That's perverse. Hey, you are part fairy. I gave her a coy grin. Very helpful. Elf O'Connell. She raised one dark brow, giving me a saucy look. Please be careful, I said and backed away, stepping out of the circle. She nodded, took a deep breath, and turned her back to us. After a moment, I saw her take the blade and watched the blood drip from her palm onto the precious gems. I, Fiona Quinn, call upon Earl Inne of the Fairy Court. I, Fiona Quinn, call upon Earl Inne. Fiona repeated. After chanting it 3 times, a bright light rose from the ground, shooting above our heads, disappearing into the treetops. Fiona's voice and the tangy smell of blood evaporated, leaving the blinding light in the middle of the forest. Apprehension crept through my body as the vortex swallowed her up. Then, after what felt like an eternity, Fiona stepped out of the circle of light. I watched as she stumbled before righting herself. Vi rushed to her side, taking a cloth to clean off the blood. So now we wait, whispered Fiona. Your wait is over. A strange voice called out as the halo of light faded. All, gorgeous woman with alabaster skin, ice, blue eyes, pale-colored locks almost touching the ground settled before us. She was bedecked in jewels and baubles, while a crown resembling the sun sat on her head. A golden paint that seemed to glow decorated her body, and what had been a cold, snowy forest was now a spring day with vivid green grass and an assortment of flowers. The figure stood out as she lifted a regal head, draped in a blinding white gown. Who are, Fiona uttered, but I cut her off no. I rushed forward and Rian grabbed Fiona, shoving her behind him. The woman grinned, a cavalier expression on her flawless face. Shall I explain? She looked down her nose, a pompous reminder she regarded us as nothing more than peasants. I felt my blood boil in my veins, knowing who she was and the evil her presence posed. Fiona, I said over my shoulder, let me introduce you to Immerse, Queen of the Fae. Chapter 26, A Cunning Queen Fiona. The air was thick with tension and fear. Even Vione appeared to quake before Celestria as she scrutinized each of us. I lowered my gaze and avoided her eyes, remembering what I had been told. Yet the sheer charisma of the fairy queen was captivating and frightening. Her magnetism felt so powerful, and the urge to peek was overwhelming. I feared I held and control myself. Hybrid girl, look at me, the queen demanded. I hesitated and lifted my head, meeting her mesmerizing gaze, and she smiled. That's right. I know you carry the blood of my kingdom, which is the only reason I answered your call. Rowan kneeled to her, eyes still focused on the ground. My lady, mortals or mutts dare not speak to me. I will address only the girl, and that goes for the witch as well. Celestria turned around and peeked back at me. She wanted me to follow her into the light, and I took a step in her direction. Fiona, don't, Rian said. It's too dangerous. He shook his head, pleading with his eyes. I have to. I threw him a sad, looking smile. Remember why we did this. Think of Kyra and all the innocent people dying. We must know who is helping my father. I pulled my hand from his grip and accompanied the queen. As I glanced over my shoulder, I saw the tension, fear, and anxiety on Rowan, Rianne, and Viona's faces as Queen Celestria entered the light. She held out her hand, inviting me along. Once we passed through the rays, it felt like I stood under a shower with cold water pelting on my head, startling me. The light was brighter on this side, and I blinked, trying to grow accustomed to its intensity. The silence deepening as I found myself in the middle of an unfamiliar place. A light with vivid colors. Strange smells floated in the air, and weird shapes surrounded me. Queen Celestria seemed to float across the floor poised and regal. She held out her slender hand with long, pointed, silver nails, and I watched as tiny flowers sprouted from her hands. I stared in wonderment as she changed before my eyes. If possible, she appeared more beautiful and mysterious than before. As the flower buds fell from her fingers and into the smoky mist, vines grew and little flowers appeared over her body. Queen Celestria placed a finger under my chin, making me stare into her eyes. Her touch felt strange and my body heated from the inside out. It was a peculiar but pleasant sensation, like my veins flowed with magic. While I tried to keep my face relaxed, I couldn't have looked away had I wanted. I struggled to keep my breathing even, remembering that Viona and Rowan told me to remain calm in the presence of a fairy. But this was the queen. She gave me a coyish smile, with her silver, stained lips turned up at both corners, revealing sharp fangs. You belong to the lineage of my family. Excuse me, Your Majesty. What do you mean? I prayed I hadn't spoken too loud or offended her. Celestria chuckled, lifting one silver brow. But you were raised human. Her voice sounded unfamiliar, thick and full of secrecy. It was no longer soft and melodic, like back in the forest. Yes, Your Majesty. My father raised me and I knew nothing about fairies until recently. And just who is your father? She tapped her chin with a razor-like nail. Cormac Quinn, Your Majesty. Celestria raised both eyebrows, appearing intrigued or surprised. I was sure which. Ah, you're the hunter and scientist's daughter, she said. I nodded in reluctance. I didn't know he was a hunter either. I blurted out. She nodded. Your father is a mysterious and devious man. Celestria released my chin, but peered at me like she was searching my soul. Yes, he is devious and has many secrets, and that's why I reached out to you. Or rather, someone in your court. She remained silent, but tilted her regal head, and I mustered the courage to continue my speech. There is a drug epidemic affecting the UK, parts of Europe, and even North America. Yes, Sexflex. Celestria interrupted, her tone sounding bored. That's why I have my subjects on lockdown, confined to my court in this realm. I refuse to allow some mortal drug to affect them. I nodded. That's understandable, Your Majesty. But we think my father has had help with the drug from someone in your court. As I watched her face change, I feared her wrath. Absolutely not. That's ludicrous, she said, her voice like ice. My subjects do not mix with the affairs of the mundane. She used the term mundane as an insult. And it worked. I thought back to everything I had learned about fairies and realized it was all correct. Although hearing her refer to mortals with such disdain bothered me, I kept my mouth shut on that matter. I realize you would like to think so, but we have investigated and even confiscated my father's computer and files. Forgive me if I'm not apt to concern myself with an investigation by a couple of mangy mutts. A lowly witch, and you, child. The queen placed her slender hands on her hips, throwing me a smug smile. I took a deep breath to calm down. Just because we are not pure fairies doesn't mean we don't have brains. Your Majesty, we have evidence that someone in your court is providing creatures of primordial as test subjects for my father's sex production. I held my breath, worrying it pushed her too far, but she appeared composed. You want me to find the subject in my court who is possibly helping the almighty hunter. Cormac Quinn. Her eyes narrowed and turned from aqua, blue to a startling silver. I sucked in a breath. Why, yes, Queen Celestria. And I would be very let me explain how this works. She arched a brow, grinning. If you require my cooperation, I must ask for yours in return. I blinked up at her and knew she had ensnared me in a trap. How can I be of help? Queen Celestria, I asked, my tongue feeling thick and fuzzy. I need to find my daughter, she said, and I watched some type of emotion cross her ethereal face. Princess, R.A.Q.I.L. Katrina Damaris. A certain mortal once had R.A.Q.I.L. keeping her safe for me, but they no longer know where she is. My eyes widened, and I realized how unprepared I was to speak with her about Kat. I had to assume that neither Rowan, Rianne, or even Vion A could have foreseen the Queen of Phi answering our request. If so, perhaps they would have schooled me on how to respond. Regarding Kat, my mind whirled, wondering what to say as I recalled Vion as warning. She refused to allow Kat to attend the ritual, and I rebuked her for it. How foolish I had been. I gulped, knowing I needed to lie, but it had to sound convincing. Keep it as close to the truth as possible, I thought, fighting back the nausea coiling in my stomach. Did you leave her with my father? I asked, keeping my voice subdued. I told her Cormac was my father, so she must realize I knew Kat. What type of game is she playing? I felt beads of sweat popping along my upper lip. I don't know where my daughter is now. It matters not who once had her. While her words rang out like a sweet lullaby, a wicked smile played along her full lips. She knew. This powerful fairy queen had to realize I knew Kat. But how much did she know? Was she privy to our household arrangements? Did she know Kat lived under my roof for years after her supposed parents died? And did she perceive we were close as sisters? I couldn't think fast enough with her glaring at me, and I felt like we were playing a game of cat and mouse. So you wish for me to find her? Yes, produce Princess A-R-A-Q-I-L or find out where she is. And then, she lifted my chin again, this time gripping it. And only then will I identify the fairy who is conspiring with Cormac Quinn. Forgive me, your majesty. I do not know who might have her, or where. Seal's Tria's wicked grin turned deadly, and she squeezed my chin, causing discomfort and cutting off my words. In a flash, she lifted me off my feet before dropping me to the ground. Shit. She knows I'm lying. The queen stared down at me and closed her eyes. I peered up in fear. She reopened her eyes, now a brilliant orange, and I felt myself lifted into thin air, hovering a few feet from the colored floor. She stood watching, hands on her hips. Because you carry the blood of my ancestors in your veins, I agreed to assist you, but make no mistake. Child, I will still snatch your life. You must prove yourself as Phi for my loyalty. But right now, you are nothing but a useless mortal to me. Your Majesty, I don't know where Princess Katrina is. You shall address her as Princess A-R-A-Q-I-L. And it seems you have your work cut out if you want me to uphold my end of this agreement. Queen Celestria pointed a long finger at me, and I tumbled back on solid ground. She folded her arms, giving me a coy grin, letting me know she had me trapped. But I would never give up Kat. My court will remain quarantined, and I forbid my subjects from contacting the mortal realm. So, until you produce Princess A-R-A-Q-I-L or decide to give up her whereabouts, you won't have another chance to address my court. Damn you to hell. I wanted to scream, but I knew better. Celestria steadied me, watching for any trace of emotion. I kept my expression placid. After a brief standoff, she said, I command you to turn over my daughter and, in return, I will arrest any member of my court collaborating with Cormac Quinn. I realized I could say no more and felt relieved she had not killed or taken me hostage to use torture tactics to gain the truth. It was clear the queen didn't know where Kat was, but she knew I held the key. She morphed into some type of flower goddess before my eyes and held out a fist. When she opened her hand, a small flower jewel twinkled up at me. The petals were a brilliant ruby red, with a black onyx center. When you find my ARAQIL. She winked, letting me know this was all a game to her. It was clear that Celestria knew I didn't have to search for Cat. Just return to the portal and plant this flowered gem under the tree, and I will come for her. The Queen of the Fae turned her back on me, and as she sauntered away, everything around me changed. The warm, sweet-smelling air turned frigid, and in the blink of an eye, I stood shivering under the moonlight and stars in Rowan's yard. I looked down at the snow covering my feet and rushed to the steps, kicking the muddy snow off. Shit, I whispered into the night air. As I entered the house, I heard voices and followed the sound. Cat was cooking and looked up, spotting me. She dropped the spatula in her hand and ran to me. Fiona, oh my God. I'd been so worried. She embraced me, and I returned the gesture, amazed at her dramatic reaction. Rowan and Drianne jumped from the table and surrounded me. Yuri back. Ryan hugged me tight, and I stared at Rowan over Rianne's shoulder. He studied me with an odd expression and his face appeared pale, with dark circles under his eyes. Yes, I'm back in the flesh. I pulled out of Rianne's embrace, focusing on Rowan. I can't believe it's already dark. And I left right after breakfast. How many hours has it been? It's been for days, Rowan said, with bitterness lacing his tone. You're joking. For days. I gaped at him, my mouth hanging open. Yes, for long days. Rowan's glare looked severe, taking me aback. After all these days, I feared we would never see you again. He gave me a sad, lopsided smile. We almost sought the council's help to force an audience with the Fae. Vi tried to summon them again at the portal, but no one responded. We even doubled the gems in gold, Rian announced with a smile. After seeing their frightened expressions, I placed a hand over my mouth. I've put them through hell. Wow, I can't believe this. I'm so sorry, but it only felt like half an hour to me. Rowan rubbed my back, and Cat led us to the dining table. Well, tell us everything. And what did my mother say when they told me she showed up? I couldn't believe it. Cat's eyes widened, reminding me of an owl. I took a deep breath and explained my conversation with Queen Celestria. Although I wanted to bring back good news, the worst possible outcome was all I had. So unless we turn over Cat, she won't help us. Ryan frowned. Rowan stared at his hands, and Cat let out a strangled, sounding cry. I cleared my throat to gain their attention, as if it couldn't get any worse. She already knew Cat had been with Cormac. She told me he was keeping Cat safe for her. I rolled my eyes. I told her Cormac was my father before she imparted this bit of information. So she had to know I was lying when I said I did not know where her daughter was. You are lucky to be alive. Rian shook his head. I'm surprised she allowed you to come back. Rowan paced the room, agitated. I can't believe she didn't keep you as leverage to get Cat back. That was an accident. He stopped in the middle of the room, frowning. We have to hide Cat somewhere safe until we settle all this. Is there somewhere secure where Celestria can't find her? I asked, while Cat gripped my hand. Take me to her, and you'll find out who's helping Cormac. I think it's the only way we can get Kyra back. Cat announced. That's kind of you. Cat, Rowan said and placed his palms on the table. But I don't trust Celestria. No, I know just where to take you. And you will be safe. You can play this game and something tells me Celestria knows more about Sexflex than she lets on. I think so. Too, I nodded. She didn't seem surprised by my request. Oh, she denied any of her subjects helping my father, but said if I returned Cat, she would arrest whoever in her court was responsible. Exactly, Rowan shouted, slapping a hand on the table. Why, if she's so desperate for her daughter, did she leave Cat with those people posing as her parents before they died? And then, Cormac. He lifted his brows to his hairline. I think Queen Celestria is me, deep in this shite. And God help us if I'm right. Chapter 27, Path of the Raven Rowan. I'm taking Cat to Lucas. I said. Lucas was my beta. But he left the pack over a year ago with a fairy. But no one knew why he left the pack. My father and I kept it a secret. Who is Lucas? Asked Fiona. My beta. I described the ties binding us wolves together, and that Lucas was more than a best friend to me. And losing him was like a blow to the gut. In Rian's eyes, I watched his anger manifest. The idea of keeping this from Rian hurt him, but as always, he remained calm, keeping it inside. I had always admired that about my brother. No matter what happened, he possessed an immense command over his emotions unlike me. After a moment, Rian took a deep breath, and I watched him swallow his temper. Well, you a witch. Well, I didn't badger you before, but now you're going to tell me where he is. And I don't care why you kept this a secret, but it's time to explain. He crossed his arms, glaring at me. I nodded, knowing I had no other choice. About a year ago, we went to a special session discussing various issues about race treaties. Yes, I remember. Rian ventured. Then you recall Lucas came with us. Gave a firm nod. Lucas was the son of my father's Badend. Like me, he was being trained to become a leader of the pack someday. There was a woman there, representing the fairy court, and he felt drawn to her. Go on. Rai unfolded his arms across his chest. That night, Lucas returned very late to the room. He seemed despondent, but also eager. It was strange seeing him like that. Now I knew what love could do to a man. Since meeting Fiona, every time I saw her, I had those mixed emotions like Lucas. Only Fiona was my destined mate. The fairy had captured Lucas's heart, and they were in love. But it was something he couldn't speak about. Ryan just nodded. What was the problem in their relationship? Fiona glanced at me, her brows raised in an innocent gesture. I gave her a sour smile. Well, she was a fairy, for one. And after some prodding, he admitted she was his destined mate. But he said he was head over heels in love, and so they ran away together. But after a few months, she vanished, leaving him heartbroken and too embarrassed to return. He vowed never to return to the pack without his mate. You should have told me. Rian spat. It was my secret to share. I shrugged. I'm sorry. Bro, and where is he now? Do you know? Fiona looked intrigued. My father, Angus, was alpha at the time, and Lucas confessed everything to us. After realizing that Lucas wanted to run off with the fairy, he helped them flee. Our father was a hopeless romantic. That same day Lucas left the pack. You knew all this time, and didn't tell me. The crestfallen expression on Rian's face was hard to watch. I'm sorry, Rian, but Lucas is my beta, and he asked me to keep the secret. My words fell silent, and I watched Rian stew in his anger. Rian, it was a necessary lie. Well, not a lie, but an omission to protect Lucas. But do you know where this Lucas is now? Fiona asked, still staring at Rian. Don't look at me. I don't know. Ryan raked his hands through his hair and threw himself into a chair. No, to keep his family and loved ones from finding him. My father bribed a witch to help move him using magic. All I know is if we can find him, Lucas will protect Cat with his life. I glanced at my sulking brother. But in order to find Lucas, he'd have to beg Fiona for her help once again, which would piss Rian off anew. The thing is, the Queen would kill Lucas if she knew he was hiding Cat, Rian said. I don't think that would motivate him to assist us. That would only happen if we told the Queen where they are, and it would defeat the purpose. Anyway, I think we should try it. Perhaps Lucas would help us, Fiona said. Maybe she already knows where I am. Cat threw her hands up. Fiona thinks my mother knows more than she's letting on. And if you won't allow me to present myself to her, I need to leave this place. I don't want to put you guys in danger, but I don't want to put your friend's life at risk. Either. Kat exhaled a ragged breath. Yeah, we're running out of options. I felt exasperated. How will you find him? Rian looked at me and I noticed the outrage had faded some. You'll have to ask Vione for another favor. Ryan grimaced. Not her again. Can't you ask someone else? No, I can't. So much for dissipating anger. I mused. Fantastic. Rian growled and stood. Can I go with you to find Vione? Kat asked, and both Rian and I looked at her. No, we both shouted. It's too dangerous. Ryan shook his head. Remember your mother. A freaking fairy queen looking for you. Kat frowned. It will be better if she stays here with the guards and my pack to protect her. I announced. Hello. I'm right here in the room. Kat said, waving a hand. Frowning. Sorry, Kat. But if we're going to go through with this crazy idea, we should leave very early tomorrow, so we waste no more time. We are only going to find Vione, and I hope it doesn't take too much time. She's a slippery witch and may not wish to be found. I threw her an apologetic smile. After wishing everyone a good night, I headed to my study. The thick carpet decorating the center of the office muffled my footsteps as I slid behind the desk and opened my junk drawer. I fished out a scrap of paper with a sole phone number. There was no name linking it to any individual person. The phone rang a few times, but after a moment it stopped and all I heard was silence. Lucas. I whispered. Rowan. Is that you? His voice held astonishment, making me anxious. What's wrong? Has something bad happened? Why are you calling? Is everyone okay? Everyone is fine. Well, sort of. Cormac Quinn has Kyra and we are in the middle of a crisis, Hal. Why, his voice sounded agitated, making me want to blurt out everything. But I refrained. Queen Celestria has contacted us. She's looking for her daughter and we need to hide her. Every Ona's safety could depend on it. What about Kyra? How did that bastard Quinn get his hands on her? And why do you have her daughter? Listen, mate. I'll explain everything in person. All right. Lucas went mute for a moment as I held my breath. Rowan. You know, I am on a hidden quest. Yes, I know. But I'm not asking you to tell me your whereabouts. I will use magic to find you and ensure your safety and secrecy. But I need your help. Lucas let out a bark of laughter. Using magic? Is this some hidden talent? Mate. It did my heart good hearing him chuckle. Man, I had missed Lucas. Hilarious Luke. I meant to have Vione use her witchcraft to find you. Oh man. I bet Ria's gonna love that. He laughed again. Yeah. It's safe to say that I'm in Rian's black books right now. Chia's already perturbed about Vione, and this extreme situation forced me to tell him I knew why you left the. What's going on? I heard him expel a long breath, and I realized I had to tell him something. It's my Luna. I ventured. You found your fated mate. His voice echoed with excitement and his statement sounded like a question. Yes, but she's connected to all this. Lucas. And right now, every Ona's safety depends on whether you assist us in protecting Princess A. Arekiwa Elkatrina. Well, the hell, we call her Kat. Listen, it's a long story and I'll fill you in soon. She didn't know she was a fairy, let alone Seal's Tria's daughter. After another nerve-wracking moment of silence, I heard Lucas groan. Is Kat your destined mate? Please tell me your Luna isn't Seal's Tria's daughter now. They are best friends, but my mate, Fiona, is directly involved. Well, hell, that's a tiny consolation. Tell your witch, Vione. There's an old pub called the Bitter Nightingale near the sea. I'll meet you there. The dial tone buzzed in my ear. A raven, Fiona said with a frown, pointing at the fat black pecking its beak into the cold ground through the dirty, slushy snow. I followed her finger and slammed on the brakes. It's a sign from Vione, I said, glancing back at Rian. He shook his head in disgust, but I jumped out of the SUV and, with caution, approached the bird. Hello. Little buddy, will you bring us some Irish luck and lead me to Vione? The raven squawked and flew off. Shit. Give me a second. Buddy. I rushed and hopped back in the vehicle. We have to follow him. This is ridiculous, complained Rianne. It's too fast to keep up with. Ridiculous or not, we can't lose it. I pushed on the gas pedal, gripping the steering wheel. I sped along for close to an hour, concentrating on my driving while Fiona and Rianne watched the raven. They guided me into the hippie district where all but two businesses were closed because of the early hour. One of them was a small gas station that remained open for 24 hours, while the other was an old bookstore filled with second-hand copies. I can't believe there's a bookstore open this early. I heard Rowan as he grumbled from the backseat, and I was tired of his cranky-ass mood. I shrugged and got out of the car, searching everywhere for the bird. Damn, you guys wait here. We'll go see if anyone knows Vione. I strode into the gas station, manned by a guy with bushy black hair and headphones on his head. He yanked a bud out of his ear, rolling his eyes as if I was an inconvenience. Sorry to disturb you, mate, but you do work here, right? Yeah, Cha-cha need. I rolled my eyes back at him. Do you know a petite, pretty woman named Vione? He narrowed his eyes. Dude, this isn't an eating store. Do you need some smoke, gas, or a drink? It had just about enough of his wise ass. I planted my hands on the counter, letting my inner wolf take over. As my eyes darkened like storm clouds, I whispered, Do you know the less or not? It's a simple question. The clerk held his palms up, backing away from the register. W works in the bookstore, a few buildings up the way, with a smile showing off my sharpened teeth. I thanked him, leaving him pale and quaking in his shoes. Serves the prick right. Welcome, called a small woman from the floor with her back to me, surrounded by books. As I stared at the back of her head, covered in a bohemian-styled hat with a long braid, I thought she was a teenager, but then she turned her face, displaying just the profile. It was Vione, dressed as she was. She seemed so childlike and didn't look like the fierce which I knew her to be. Vione had tamed her wild, curly red hair, and her ocean green eyes seemed duller than usual. She had her lips coated in black lipstick, and it stood out against her pale freckled skin. The vintage dress displayed peace signs, flowers, and moons, which she covered with an old jean jacket. Her nails were as dark as her lips. Looks like you found me, or did you come here for a book? She motioned around the room with a golden eyebrow arched. I stared at her and shook my head before strolling around the small space. Most of the books were old mythical or witchcraft tunes. Who in the hell comes looking for books like this at 5 in the morning? You'd be surprised how many fucked up miners hang out here in the middle of the night, looking to summon a monster or ghost, she said with a laugh as she stood facing me. Real cute sending the raven to me. Vione. The smile on her dark lips grew broader. You liked that, did you? Well, well. You're either one who needed me, not the other way around. Maybe next time I'll make it harder for you. She winked at me. Cheeky ass witch. A bell chimed over the door, and Rowan entered the bookstore. The guy next door said, Rye, and declared before seeing Vione. Shit. Of course. I smelled a witch before I hit the door. He glared at Vione, and I heard his deep growl. She blew him a kiss and hopped on a stool behind the old-fashioned cash register. The big bad wolf and his mangy pup brother. What can I do for you guys? She smirked, looking like a Cheshire cat. Rowan glowered at her. We need your help. Again, I told her with a frown. This is becoming a habit. Vione replied in a casual tone, leafing through a book. What is it now? Fiona finally returned after 4 days. But Queen Celestria is demanding her daughter back in exchange for helping us. I see. She continued studying the stupid book. I knew that would happen, and it's why I didn't want Cat tagging along. The dark-eyed raven flew in through the back door and landed on the counter. letting out a caw. You knew or guessed? I asked, gritting my teeth. Vi tilted her head and sighed. It didn't take a genius. Cat is the queen's daughter. For fuck's sake. She would have known her. I didn't know she wanted her daughter back with the circumstances, but I'm not shocked. Right. Well, that's the rub. So now we have to hide Cat somewhere safe. I need to take her to my beta. Lucas. But HES stashed out in some witch realm. That got her attention. Which realm? She tightened her eyes, appearing confused. I don't know the specifics. That's your area of expertise. My late father aided Lucas by having a witch place him somewhere safe. Viola laughed, shaking her head. You should really buy some books on witchcraft. Rowan, your friend isn't in a witch realm. If I had to guess, it'd say the witch placed a protective shield around him. Fine. But can you find him or get us to where he is? I know where to meet him. I reached into my jacket for the name of the pub. I got the information right, she cut me off. You expect me to put my life and the lives of my coven in danger for nothing in return. Vi as Jot witched, her voice cold as ice. Yes, Rianne shouted. Of course you do. Wolf pup. Vi retaliated with a hint of sarcasm. Can you help us find my friends so we can get Cat to safety or not? I asked, hating the desperation in my voice. After a moment of thought, Vi sighed. I will. But remember, everything has a price. We don't have a ton of money on us. I hasten to say, but we will pay you whatever. Vi shook her head. It's not always about money, she explained. One can't use magic without paying a price. Well, pay it. Rian said in a rush. I want my sister back and Cat safe. Great. She held out her hand. Put your palm on mine. Vi gestured at me, ignoring Rianne. I obeyed and watched her reach into her bra, pulling out a small knife. And I grimaced. Why do you witches always use blood? I kept my palm up and glanced away as she cut a deep slice. She grabbed an amethyst-colored crystal pendulum and rubbed it in my palm. Blood is the best channel, she said, but I still did not know what she meant. Maybe I should buy one of her damn witchcraft tomes. With a wink, she reached underneath the counter and pulled out a map. She grabbed my hand, squeezing more blood, and I stared in astonishment as the crystal pendulum started moving. Vi brought the crystal over the old map, her gaze focusing on the spinning stone. I sense him, she whispered as the twisting gem fluttered over Wales. She frowned and followed the pendulum across the yoke. Got him. She grinned up at me. Ryan rushed over, peering over my shoulder at a spot near Devon, a small seaside town called Salcombe. Are you sure? I asked, glaring at her. Vi rolled her eyes.